So do you want to learn more about the endocrine system? Well, today is your lucky day because in this lesson, I'm going to be talking about all things hormones and the endocrine system. If you don't know me, my name is Nigel and I graduated with a 99.05 ATAR in 2023 and received A+ across all biology and chemistry tests, and it's my pleasure to bring you the video for this week. So let's get into it. To kick things off, we need to understand what the endocrine system actually is. The endocrine system refers to the system in which messages can be sent all across the body using chemicals, and these chemicals are called hormones. Hormones travel around the bloodstream and complementarily bind on the receptors of target cells to bring about the specific response. Complementary binding simply means that the cells have a receptor which is specific to the unique shape of the hormone to attach to. Your blood sugar needs to be kept within a certain range to make sure that the cells are getting enough energy to sustain itself, but not too much that it overwhelms them. Some key terms we need to know before we discuss this further are the terms glucose and glycogen. Glucose is the biological term we use to refer to sugar, and it flows through your blood in this form. However, when glucose gets absorbed by different cells, it gets stored in a form known as glycogen. Now that we know this, you need to know that the two main hormones which are responsible for regulating blood sugar are insulin and glucagon. Insulin is a hormone secreted by beta cells in the pancreas in order to decrease blood sugar levels. It does this by encouraging cells to take up sugar from the blood. As the cells begin to use up the glucose from the blood, the amount of sugar in the blood will decrease. So now we need to talk about glucagon, which is produced by alpha cells in the pancreas in order to increase blood sugar levels. It does this by encouraging cells to break down their glycogen stores into glucose and then release them into the bloodstream. So here's a useful tip. I used to always get mixed up between glycogen and glucagon. They all sound very much the same. So here's a hack to remember them. If we look at the word glucagon, we can see that it has the word go in it. So just remember that glucagon tells cells to go and release glucose into the bloodstreams, and then you're all set. While we're on the topic of blood sugar levels, let's have a talk about diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic disease in which the body cannot regulate its blood sugar levels. So there are two different types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition, which is just a fancy way of saying that the body attacks cells which it thinks are dangerous, but in reality they are not. In type 1 diabetes, the body attacks the beta cells in the pancreas which are responsible for creating insulin, which means that the body doesn't produce enough insulin in order to regulate the blood sugar levels appropriately. On the other hand, type 2 diabetes usually results from an unhealthy lifestyle. If you constantly gorge yourself on sugary foods, your body needs to produce more insulin to counteract it. Over time, the beta cells get worn out and begin to produce less insulin. And the insulin which it does produce ends up becoming ineffective over time, and cells will not respond to it as appropriately. And this is why it's important to maintain a balanced diet and look after your body. Let's move on from how the body controls blood sugar and let's talk about how it controls osmolarity, blood volume, and blood pressure. Yeah, it's a lot of things which need to be controlled, but thankfully there is a hormone which controls all of these, and this is called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH for short. ADH is produced in the hypothalamus region of the brain and stored in the pituitary gland. When ADH is released, the body is encouraged to store water in the collecting ducts of nephrons, which are filters in your kidney. This is because ADH inserts cell transport channels on the surface of the cells, called aquaporins, which allows water to flow in. This means that the body holds on to more water instead of releasing them as waste, such as urine. So how does ADH regulate osmolarity, blood volume, and blood pressure? Well, first we need to define all these terms. Osmolarity is basically just the salt concentration of your blood. Blood pressure refers to the pressure put on the walls of the blood vessels. And blood volume, well, it's just your volume of blood. So when ADH is released, the body is going to hold on to more water, and this water is going to contribute to the volume of blood, and therefore blood volume is going to increase. Because the blood volume has increased, the salt concentration is going to decrease as the blood has now become slightly more diluted. Also, because the blood volume has increased, more pressure is going to be placed on the blood vessels, which means that there is an increase of the blood pressure. So to summarize, increasing ADH decreases osmolarity and increases blood volume and blood pressure. Likewise, if ADH decreases, then more water is going to be expelled in waste such as your urine, which means that your blood is going to become more salt concentrated. This will also mean that the blood volume decreases and subsequently your blood pressure will decrease. So now let's talk about metabolism. Metabolism is a word used to describe how efficiently cells are carrying out biological processes. The speed at which cells do this is controlled by a hormone called thyroxine and is stored in the thyroid gland in your neck. When thyroxine is released, it increases the cell's metabolic rate, which is the amount of calories it uses, and then allows more energy to be available for cells to use. The way thyroxine is secreted actually involves another hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH for short. When the receptors in the hypothalamus detect a drop in thyroxine levels, it then stimulates the anterior pituitary gland to release TSH into the bloodstream. TSH then travels to the thyroid gland and stimulates it to release more thyroxine. If your body isn't getting enough thyroxine, then you become prone to symptoms such as sleepiness, lack of appetite, and brain fog. If you are getting too much thyroxine, then you may suffer from rapid heartbeat or shortness of breath. This is why it has to be regulated within your body. So now let's talk about everyone's favorite hormone, adrenaline. Adrenaline is a hormone which is crucial to the fight or flight response. The fight or flight response is a protective mechanism for the body when it is put in danger, and it causes the body either to run away from the danger or to fight and attack it. Although hormones are generally released slowly, adrenaline needs to be released quickly in order to make you respond as fast as possible and keep you safe. When adrenaline gets released, it stops insulin from being produced, and it binds to receptors on liver cells. So this triggers a whole sequence of steps which ends up with lots of stores of glycogen being converted to glucose and sent into the bloodstream. So now the cells in your body have a huge amount of sugar available to them to convert into energy and help you in the face of danger. Some physiological changes you might notice can include an increase of heart rate to make sure that more sugar-filled blood gets sent all around the body. You also may notice that the bronchial tubes in your lungs begin to expand, which allows more oxygen to enter the bloodstream and become available for cells to use to make energy. There are several other changes which adrenaline can make to your body, such as dilating your pupils and increasing your metabolic rate. But overall, the changes caused by adrenaline help you to stay safe and away from harm's way. So there you have it. Now you know more about the endocrine system and how different hormones help you to stay alive and healthy. To stay updated on weekly videos, why don't you subscribe and hit that notification button, and while you're at it, leave a like below. Also, why don't you head over to our Instagram page where we post study tips and school hacks for you to enjoy. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is Nigel signing off.